The air in the command center was stale. No one had left the room for over 20 hours. Major General Sam Reeves stood with his hands behind his back, watching the large screen that showed another red dot disappearing. Another world lost. Helios. System has fallen, said the young officer at the communication station. Her voice was flat, too tired to show emotion anymore. Sam nodded slowly. He had expected this, but it still hurt. Helios had been home to over 4 billion Galadrians. Now it belonged to the Nexus Empire. How many ships did we lose? He asked. Lieutenant Diane Miller checked her screen. All of them, sir. The 7th. Fleet is gone. Sam closed his eyes for a moment. Admiral Cora had been a friend. He had known her for 30 years. Now she was gone too, along with 40,000 crew members. That's the 3rd fleet this month, said Commander Jack Ellis as he walked into the room. He handed Sam a data tablet. The Nexus are moving faster than we predicted. Their new ships are better than our intelligence suggested. Sam looked at the report. The numbers were bad. Very bad. The Galadrian Alliance had once controlled over 300 star systems. Now they had only 7 left. Their mighty space force, once the pride of the sector, was reduced to a handful of outdated ships and tired crews. How much time do we have before they reach us? Sam asked. Jack pointed to the calculations on the screen. 3 months at most, probably less. The room grew quiet. Everyone knew what that meant. In 3 months, the 5,000-year-old Galadrian civilization would end. The Nexus Empire did not take prisoners or allow surrenders. They simply took worlds and removed any species that stood in their way. We should evacuate the civilian population, Diane suggested. At least send the children somewhere safe. Where? Jack asked, his voice bitter. We've been pushed back to the edge of known space. There's nowhere left to run. Sam walked to the large star map that covered the main wall. Their remaining territory was a tiny island in a sea of red that marked Nexus-controlled space. For 20 years, they had fought and lost, fought and lost. Each year, the Nexus grew stronger while the Galadrians grew weaker. Sir, called a young communications officer from his station. We're picking up a signal. From the front? Sam asked. No, sir. It's coming from the Arcturus void. The officer looked confused. There's nothing out there, sir. The void is just empty space and radiation clouds. Sam frowned. The Arcturus void was a massive region of space that no ship could safely cross. The radiation would kill any crew and destroy most electronics. It formed a natural barrier at the edge of their galaxy, one that even the Nexus had never tried to pass. What kind of signal? Sam walked over to the communications station. It's a first contact protocol, sir. The officer looked up, his eyes wide. But it doesn't match any known species in our database. Sam felt a chill run down his spine. A new species? Now, when they were about to lose everything, put it on screen, he ordered. The main screen flickered and changed from the battle map to a series of mathematical equations and simple images. It was indeed a standard first contact package, the kind used to establish basic communication with a new intelligent species. But the structure was unlike anything in Galadrian records. Can we respond? Sam asked. The officer nodded. Yes, sir. The signal includes coordinates for a reply. Send our standard first contact response, Sam ordered, and notify High Command immediately. As the officer worked, Diane came to stand next to Sam. Do you think it could be help? She asked quietly. Sam shook his head. After 20 years of war, I don't believe in lucky breaks anymore. But we're out of options, so we might as well see what they want. 3 days later, Sam found himself on a small shuttle heading toward a moon that orbited a gas giant at the edge of Galadrian space. High Command had decided to send him as their representative to meet these newcomers. If it was a trap, they would lose only one general. If it wasn't, well, no one dared hope too much. The shuttle's pilot pointed ahead. There it is, sir. Sam looked out the viewport and saw a ship unlike any he had ever seen. It was sleek and dark, with none of the glowing energy fields that both Galadrian and Nexus ships used. It seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Are you getting any readings?" Sam asked. The pilot shook his head. "No, sir. Our sensors can't seem to lock onto it. It's like it's not even there." That was impossible. Even with stealth technology, no ship could hide completely from sensors at this range. The shuttle landed. On the small moon's surface, a barren rock with no atmosphere. Sam put on his environmental suit and stepped out with 2 guards. They had agreed to keep the meeting group small. From the strange ship came 4 figures, also in environmental suits. They walked with a confidence that suggested they were used to gravity, similar to the moon's. As they got closer, Sam could see that they were bipedal and roughly the same size as Galadrians. One of the figures stepped forward and raised a hand in what Sam guessed was a peaceful greeting. Then, through the clear front of their helmet, Sam saw something that made him freeze. The alien looked almost exactly like a Galadrian, 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, but there were subtle differences in the face shape and coloring. This wasn't a Galadrian, but it was shockingly similar. The alien touched a control on their suit, and Sam's communication system picked up a voice speaking in perfect Galadrian. "I am Admiral Kate Winters of Earth Fleet Command. On behalf of humanity, I greet the Galadrian Alliance." Sam took a moment to find his voice. "I am Major General Sam Reeves of the Galadrian Defense Force. How do you know our language?" The alien, the human, seemed to smile slightly. "We've been listening to your communications for some time. We know about your war with the Nexus Empire. We know you're losing." Sam felt his guards tense beside him, but he kept his voice calm. "And why would that matter to you? Your species is from beyond the Arcturus void. The Nexus would never threaten you." "Not yet," Admiral Winters said. "But we've studied their expansion patterns. Eventually they would find a way to reach us. We prefer to deal with threats before they reach our doorstep." Sam studied the human carefully. "You're offering help?" "We're offering a partnership," Winters corrected. "Your people know this region of space. You know the Nexus. We have resources and technologies that might surprise them." Sam almost laughed. What could one ship do against the might of the Nexus Empire? But he didn't see any humor in the human's eyes. Instead, he saw something that had become rare among his own people: confidence. Admiral Kate Winters stood on the bridge of the EFS Dauntless and watched the stars. This far from Earth, even the familiar constellations looked different. Her ship had traveled farther than any human vessel before it, crossing the dangerous radiation clouds of the Arcturus void that had kept humanity hidden from the rest of the galaxy for centuries. "The Galadrian delegation is ready to board, Admiral," said Communications Officer Paul Grant. He was young, like most of the crew. "The best and brightest Earth had to offer." Kate nodded. "Bring them in and escort them to the conference room." She took one last look at the view screen. Beyond her ship was the small Galadrian shuttle. Beyond that, barely visible, was the edge of Galadrian space. And beyond that was the vast empire of the Nexus, spreading like a disease across the stars. Kate had studied the Nexus for years, ever since Earth's deep space monitoring stations had first picked up signals from this distant war. The Nexus Empire was efficient, ruthless, and very, very hungry. They didn't just conquer, they consumed. The conference room was simple but impressive. A long table made of real wood, a luxury in space, with the Earth flag on one wall and screens on the others. Kate entered to find Major General Sam Reeves and 2 other Galadrians already seated. Their faces showed a mix of hope and distrust. "Welcome aboard the Dauntless," Kate said as she sat down. "I hope your journey was comfortable." Sam's face remained stiff. "Forgive me, Admiral, but we're not here to discuss comfort. My people are dying. If you truly want to help, I need to know what you're offering." Kate smiled slightly. She liked directness. "Fair enough. First, let me show you what you're really facing." She touched a control, and one of the screens came to life, showing detailed scans of Nexus Fleet's bases and weapon systems. The information was far more complete than anything the Galadrians had. "How did you get this?" asked one of the other Galadrians, an older female introduced as Commander Ellis. "We've had stealthed observation platforms scattered throughout this. region for over a decade, Kate explained. Your detection systems can't find them, neither can the Nexus. Sam leaned forward. You've been watching us? For 10 years? We've been watching everyone, Kate corrected. Earth has a policy of knowing its neighborhood before introducing itself. The third Galadrian, a scientist named Varen, studied the images with wide eyes. This level of detail, you must have platforms very close to Nexus installations. Kate nodded. We do, and that's just the beginning of what we can offer. She changed the display to show a new image, a fleet of ships, hundreds of them gathered in formation. They were sleek, dark vessels similar to the Dauntless, but varied in size and shape. This is the first Earth expeditionary fleet, Kate said, currently waiting on the other side of the Arcturus void. One word from me and they cross over. The Galadrians stared in shock. That's more ships than we have left in our entire defense force, Sam said quietly. And these ships are just the first wave, Kate added. We've been preparing for this possibility for a long time. Commander Ellis frowned. Why? Why would Earth commit such resources to a war so far from your home? Kate's face grew serious. Because we've seen what happens to civilizations that wait until the threat is at their doorstep. The Nexus doesn't stop expanding, ever. They've destroyed 12 species that we know of, and if they finish with you, they'll eventually find a way through the void to us. So this is self-preservation, Sam said. Yes, Kate admitted. But it's also an opportunity. Earth needs allies in this part of space, friends who know the territory. The Galadrians need our help to survive. It's a good match. Sam exchanged looks with his colleagues, then turned back to Kate. What exactly do you propose? A full military alliance, Kate said. We combine our forces, we share technology and intelligence, we fight together. And after? Commander Ellis asked. If we win, what then? Kate met her gaze evenly. Then we negotiate a lasting peace, one that ensures both our peoples can live without fear of the Nexus. Sam was quiet for a long moment. Kate could almost see the thoughts racing behind his eyes. He was a military man caught in an impossible situation, being offered a lifeline that seemed too good to be true. I need to see your ships in action, he finally said. Something to take back to my leaders besides words and pictures. Kate had expected this. There's a small Nexus outpost at the edge of your territory, a monitoring station with minimal defenses. We can show you what one of our ships can do. 2 days later, Sam stood on the bridge of the Dauntless beside Kate. On the main screen was a small space station orbiting a lifeless moon. It was a Nexus early warning post, staffed by perhaps 20 soldiers. This station has been tracking Galadrian ship movements for months, Kate explained. It's part of their intelligence network. Sam nodded. He had wanted to destroy it for some time, but couldn't spare the ships. What are you going to do? He asked. Launch missiles? Kate turned to her weapons officer. Lieutenant Clark, deploy a hunter drone. A small bay opened on the underside of the Dauntless, and a device no bigger than a small car emerged. It didn't look like a weapon to Sam. It had no visible engines or weapons, just a smooth, dark surface. What is that? He asked. Watch, Kate said simply. The drone moved toward the Nexus station, accelerating slowly at first, then faster. The station's defenses didn't react. They didn't seem to see it at all. They're not firing, Sam noted. They can't see it, Kate explained. The drone absorbs sensor signals instead of reflecting them. The drone reached the station and attached itself to the outer hull. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, without any explosion or visible beam, the station's lights simply went out, all of them, all at once. What happened? Sam asked, confused. The drone released a swarm of microscopic machines into their systems, Kate said. They disabled everything. Power, life support, communications. The station is dead. Sam stared at the screen. The crew? Unconscious from gas released through their air vents. They'll be picked up by the drone and brought here as prisoners. Kate turned to face him directly. This is just one small example of what we can do, General. One drone from one ship. Sam looked at the dead station, The human officers working calmly at their stations as if what they had just done was routine. Perhaps for them, it was. Your technology is unlike anything I've seen, he admitted. Different from ours. Different from the Nexus. We evolved on a different path, Kate agreed. While you focused on energy fields and the Nexus developed biological technology, we explored other options. Sam made his decision. I'll recommend the Alliance to High Command, but I have one question, Admiral. The ship you showed us in your fleet image, was that the real size of your forces? Kate's expression didn't change. No, General. That was just the advance force. The rest are still being prepared. Sam felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. He had just caught a glimpse of humanity's true power, and it both reassured and terrified him. Colonel Greg Martinez walked in a circle around the holographic display. The Galadrian officers watched him with confused looks. The room was quiet except for his boots on the metal floor. This, Greg said, pointing to the glowing image of a large Nexus battleship, is not your real problem. The Galadrian commanders exchanged glances. The man in charge, General Vex, frowned deeply. With all respect, Colonel, those battleships have destroyed hundreds of our vessels. They are very much our problem. Greg shook his head. No, your real problem is this. He touched a control, and the display changed to show recordings of past battles. You fight like they expect you to fight, you form neat lines, you follow old rules. You're predictable. Some of the Galadrians looked angry now. Sam Reeves, standing at the back of the room, watched carefully. The alliance with the humans was just 3 weeks old, and already there were tensions. Field Marshal Laura Chen stepped forward. She was Earth's top military strategist, a small woman with a calm voice that somehow filled the room. What Colonel Martinez means, she said, is that conventional warfare favors the stronger side, and right now that's not you. She touched the controls again, and new images appeared. Small ships moving in strange patterns, hidden bases, surprise attacks. This is how Earth fought its early wars when we were outnumbered, she explained. We call it asymmetric warfare. Greg took over again. The Nexus expects you to defend your remaining systems with your fleet positioned here, here, and here. He pointed to 3 locations. That's exactly what you should not do. Then what should we do? Asked General Vex, his voice tight with frustration. Stop thinking like a traditional military, Greg said. Start thinking like rebels, like guerrillas. Sam stepped forward now. Let him finish, General. I've seen their methods work. Laura nodded thanks to Sam and continued. We don't have enough ships yet to challenge the Nexus fleet directly, but we don't need to. We can make them bleed without ever facing their main forces. The next 2 hours were unlike any military briefing the Galadrians had ever attended. The humans talked about cutting supply lines, destroying communication relays, raiding outposts, and then disappearing before the enemy could respond. They talked about spreading false information, about traps and decoys, about making the Nexus waste resources chasing ghosts. This isn't honorable combat, one Galadrian officer objected. No, Greg agreed. It's effective combat, and right now you can't afford honor. You need to survive. Later, in a smaller meeting room, Sam sat with Greg, Laura, and Kate Winters. The human admiral had arrived to check on progress. Your officers aren't happy, Kate observed. Sam sighed. They're traditional warriors. What you're suggesting goes against 5,000 years of Galadrian military doctrine. Do they understand that those 5,000 years of doctrine have led them to the edge of extinction? Greg asked bluntly. Sam didn't answer immediately. The truth was painful. They're beginning to. The younger officers see it more clearly. Good, Laura said. Because we need to move quickly. The Nexus are preparing their final push. Our intelligence suggests they'll attack within 2 months. Kate turned to a new person who had just entered the room, a slim woman with short dark hair. Lieutenant Olivia Ward, our head of cyber warfare. What have you found? Olivia placed a small device on the table, and it projected new images. I've been inside the Nexus command network for 8 days now. They have no idea we exist. They think the Galadrians are still fighting alone. Sam stared at her. You broke into their command network? Our best hackers have tried for years without success. Olivia gave a small smile. Different approach. The Nexus use biological computers with quantum elements. Everyone tries to hack them using similar systems. We used old-style electronic methods. They have no defenses against. What have you learned? Kate asked. The Nexus fleet has supply problems. They've expanded too quickly. Their frontline ships are at 70% capacity for fuel and ammunition. Olivia pointed to specific fleet locations. These groups here are particularly vulnerable. Greg leaned forward eagerly. Perfect targets for our first strikes. Over the next 3 weeks, small teams of human and Galadrian special forces carried out missions that changed the shape of the war. They didn't attack the main Nexus fleets. Instead, they hit fuel depots, communication arrays, and supply convoys. Sam watched from a command center as a mixed human-Galadrian team destroyed a major Nexus refueling station. The humans had provided technology that made their ships nearly invisible to Nexus sensors. They struck without warning and vanished before reinforcements arrived. At first, the Nexus responded by sending large forces to protect their supply lines. This was exactly what the humans wanted. The big Nexus ships were now burning fuel chasing enemies they couldn't find, protecting targets that had already been destroyed. They're getting frustrated, Olivia reported after 2 weeks of successful raids. They can't understand how the Galadrians suddenly got so effective. Their commanders are blaming each other. Sam looked at the latest battle reports. For the first time in years, the Galadrians were winning. Not big victories, but small ones that added up. The Nexus advance had slowed, then stopped. It's working, he told Kate during their daily meeting. But the Nexus will adapt eventually. They're not stupid. Kate nodded. We don't need them to. Stay stupid, we just need time. Time for what? For the rest of our fleet to arrive, Kate said. The first main battle group crossed the void yesterday, 500 ships. Sam felt his breath catch. 500? That's just the beginning, Kate said. And each one carries technology the Nexus has never seen. Sam looked at the star map on the wall. The Nexus still controlled most of the galaxy. They still had thousands of ships and millions of soldiers. They were still one of the most powerful empires in history. But for the first time, Sam allowed himself to feel something dangerous. Hope. At that moment, in Nexus High Command, Grand Admiral Zex Cora was losing patience. His officers stood nervously before him as he reviewed the latest failures. How are the Galadrians doing this? He demanded. They were beaten. They had nothing left. We don't know, Admiral, one officer admitted. Their ships seem to disappear from our sensors. They strike and vanish. Might find them. Find. Zex's Cora slammed his fist on the table. Find them and destroy them. I want the final attack to begin in 30 days. The Emperor is watching this campaign personally now. The officers saluted and hurried away. None of them wanted to tell the Admiral the truth, that for all their searching, they had found no explanation for the Galadrians' sudden change in tactics and technology. None of them had yet realized that they were no longer fighting just the Galadrians. Grand Admiral Zex Cora stood tall on the command deck of the Nexus flagship, the Eternal Dominion. At nearly 8 feet tall, with pale green skin and 6 fingers on each hand, he was an impressive figure even among his own kind. His black uniform bore the golden symbols of 50 successful conquests. All ships report ready, Admiral, said his second-in-command. The final attack force is assembled. Zex Cora nodded, studying the massive holographic display before him. It showed over 2,000 Nexus warships arranged in perfect formation, the largest attack fleet ever assembled in Nexus history. It had taken 2 months to gather them all here, at the edge of Galadrian space. Begin the advance, he ordered. Standard formation, full sensor sweeps. I want no surprises this time. The massive fleet moved forward as one, a wall of destruction, headed for the 7 remaining Galadrian systems. Intelligence reports showed that the Galadrians had gathered their remaining ships at their homeworld. A pathetic last stand. Zex Cora would crush them and complete his mission. The Emperor would be pleased. Time to Galadrian defense line? He asked. 4 hours at current speed, Admiral. Zex Cora smiled. By the end of today, the Galadrian species would join the 12 others that the Nexus had removed from the galaxy. Their worlds would be cleansed and reshaped for Nexus use. Their resources would feed the ever-growing empire. Their name would be forgotten. 3 hours into the advance, the first reports of trouble came in. "Admiral, we've lost contact with Scout Group 7, a communications officer reported. Zex Cora frowned. "Cause?" "Unknown, sir. They were at the front edge of our right flank. Last transmission was routine, then nothing. Send Scout Group 8 to investigate." 10 minutes later, Scout Group 8 also went silent. Then a third group, all without any distress calls or signs of battle. Zex Cora felt the first stirrings of concern. "Full stop. All ships hold position." As the fleet came to a halt, strange readings began appearing on the sensors. "Sir, we're detecting unusual gravitational fluctuations ahead," reported the science officer. "They're small but growing in strength." "Source?" "Unknown, sir. There's nothing visible that could cause such effects." Suddenly, alarms blared across the bridge. "Multiple contacts," shouted the sensor officer. "Hundreds of objects directly in our path." Zexicora stepped closer to the display. Where moments before there had been empty space, now there were countless small objects scattered across their advance route. "What are they?" he demanded. Before anyone could answer, the objects activated. Space itself seemed to twist and tear around them. Nexus ships caught in these distortions were ripped apart, their hulls crushed by impossible forces. "Gravity weapons," the science officer cried. "They're creating localized gravity wells." "Evasive maneuvers," Zexicora ordered. "All ships break formation." The perfect Nexus formation dissolved into chaos as ships tried to avoid the deadly gravity mines. As they scattered, new alarms sounded. New contacts. Small vessels approaching from multiple vectors. Hundreds of small ships appeared, moving at incredible speeds. Unlike the large, biological-looking vessels of the Galadrians, these were sleek and dark, almost impossible to track on sensors. "Those aren't Galadrian ships," Zexicora realized aloud. "What are they?" The strange vessels opened fire, but instead of the energy beams that both Nexus and Galadrian ships used, these fired solid projectiles at speeds approaching that of light. The Nexus shields, designed to disperse energy weapons, were useless against physical objects moving so fast. Ships began exploding throughout the Nexus fleet. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion shook as something struck them. "Damage report," Zexicora demanded. "Hull breach on decks 12 through 15. Shields are ineffective against their weapons." More alarms joined the cacophony on the bridge. "Sir, our computer systems are being attacked. Some kind of electronic warfare we've never seen before." All across the Nexus fleet, ships were losing control of their systems. Weapons fired at random, engines shut down. Some vessels even turned and fired on their own allies. "Who are they?" Zexicora shouted as his mighty fleet fell into disarray around him. Where did they come from? On the bridge of the human carrier EFS Intrepid, hidden just beyond sensor range, General Ryan Brooks watched the battle unfold with Admiral Kate Winters at his side. "The gravity mines worked perfectly," Ryan observed. "Their formation is broken." Kate nodded. "Phase 2 is also on schedule. The kinetic strike teams are hitting their command ships." The Intrepid's main screen showed the battle from multiple angles. The Nexus fleet, once so orderly, was now scattered and confused. Human fighters darted between the larger enemy ships, firing railgun rounds that tore through Nexus hulls like paper. "They're adapting," Ryan pointed out as some Nexus ships began to adjust their shields, trying to block the physical projectiles. "Faster than we expected." "As expected," Kate said calmly. "Time for Phase 3. She touched her communication panel. "All ships, this is Admiral Winters. Execute Phase 3. Across the battlefield, larger human warships decloaked and moved into attack positions. Unlike the small fighters, these ships carried more powerful weapons. Electromagnetic pulse cannons that disabled Nexus systems without destroying the ships, and precision beam weapons that targeted engines and weapon systems. Sam Reeves stood beside them, watching in awe. "This isn't a battle," he said quietly. "It's a slaughter." Kate's face remained professional, but her eyes were hard. They came to exterminate your people, General Reeves. We're simply making sure they fail. On the Eternal Dominion, Zexacora fought to maintain control as systems failed around him. Order a retreat, he finally commanded. All ships fall back and regroup at Nexus Prime. Communications are down, Admiral, his officer replied, panic in his voice. We can't reach most of the fleet. Zexacora stared at the tactical display, in disbelief. In just under 40 minutes, his perfect attack force had been reduced to scattered groups of damaged ships, unable to coordinate or fight effectively. What is happening? He whispered. As if in answer, a message cut through the static on all Nexus communications channels. It was audio only, in perfect Nexus language. Attention Nexus forces. This is Admiral Catherine Winters of the Earth Fleet Command. Your advance stops here. Your empire will expand no further. Return to your space immediately or face complete destruction. Earth? Zexacora had never heard of such a place. A new species had entered the war, one with technology the Nexus had never encountered. Sir, his second-in-command said, his voice shaking. We've lost 40% of our fleet. Another 20% report critical damage. We can't continue this attack. For the first time in his long military career, Grand Admiral Zexacora gave the order he had never imagined he would give. Signal all remaining ships. Full retreat. As the surviving Nexus ships turned and fled, Sam Reeves watched with mixed emotions. Relief that the threat was over. Pride in the alliance that had saved his people, but also shock at how completely the humans had dominated the battle. Your ships will pursue? He asked Kate. She shook her head. Not yet. Let them run home and tell their leaders what happened here today. Let them understand that everything has changed. Ryan Brooks nodded in agreement. The galaxy just got a new player in the game. 6 months had passed since the great battle that humans now called the Nexus Rout. On the planet Galadria Prime, the ancient Hall of Unity gleamed in the morning sunlight. For centuries, it had hosted the most important events in Galadrian history. Today it would witness perhaps the most significant of all. Inside the vast circular chamber, representatives from across the galaxy gathered. The Galadrian seats were filled with officials in their traditional blue and silver robes. Nearby sat the Nexus delegation, their green skin standing out against their black uniforms. Their faces showed barely controlled anger and resentment. And then there were the humans. They occupied a new section of seats, created specially for this occasion. Earth's ambassador Heather Martinez sat in the central position, wearing a simple white suit. Unlike the large delegations of other species, the humans had brought only 5 representatives. Sam Reeves, now wearing the gold sash of the Galadrian High Command, stood at the speaker's platform. 2 years ago, he had been preparing for the end of his civilization. Now he was opening the first Galactic Peace Conference. We gathered today to establish a new order, he began. One based not on conquest but on cooperation. His eyes moved to the Nexus delegation. Their leader, Supreme Chancellor Dexmore, glared back. The Nexus Empire had lost nearly 60% of its military strength in the failed invasion and subsequent human counterattacks. They had no choice but to negotiate. After Sam's opening speech, Ambassador Martinez took the platform. Her voice was calm, but carried throughout the hall. Humanity comes in peace, she said, the translation devices, carrying her words to each species in their own language. But we will not tolerate aggression, expansion through conquest, or the subjugation of sentient species. The Nexus Chancellor shifted uncomfortably. These were direct references to his empire's practices. The treaty before you establishes new boundaries, Heather continued. It requires the Nexus to withdraw from 12 systems they have occupied in the past decade. It provides for the free movement of trade ships, and it establishes a joint security force to maintain these terms. What she didn't say openly was that this joint security force would be primarily human ships. Everyone in the room understood the reality. Humans were now the dominant military power in the galaxy. The negotiations continued for 3 days. The Nexus fought for every small concession, while the Galadrians pushed for harsher terms against their old enemies. The humans served as mediators, but their position was clear. Peace would come one way or another. On the final day, the treaty was signed. As delegates filed out of the hall, Sam found Admiral Kate Winters waiting in a small side room. "Congratulations, General," she said. "Your people have their worlds back." Sam nodded. He had worked closely with Kate over the past 6 months and had come to respect her deeply, but there was still something that bothered him. "You never just came to help us, did you?" he asked directly. "This was always about establishing human dominance in our part of the galaxy." Kate didn't smile or frown. Her face remained neutral. "What we did was mutually beneficial. The Galadrians survive, the Nexus is contained, and humanity has a foothold in galactic politics." "A foothold?" Sam raised an eyebrow. "You're building permanent bases in 20 systems. Your ships patrol our trade routes. Your technology is centuries ahead of anyone else's." "Would you prefer the alternative?" Kate asked quietly. "Would you prefer the Nexus had won?" Sam had no answer for that. Of course he wouldn't. His people were alive because of humans. Their worlds were safe. But he couldn't shake the feeling that they had traded one powerful neighbor for another. Kate seemed to read his thoughts. "We're not the Nexus, Sam. We don't conquer. We don't destroy species, but we do protect our interests." "And what are those interests exactly?" "Stability, security, the right of all intelligent species to exist without fear of extinction." Kate looked out the window at the Galadrian capital city. Earth spent centuries fighting its own wars. We nearly destroyed ourselves more than once. We learned the hard way that power must be balanced with restraint. Later that evening, in a secure communication room, Kate spoke with Earth's President Alan Peterson. The quantum communication system allowed real-time conversation despite the vast distance. "The treaty is signed," Kate reported. "The Nexus have accepted all our major terms." The President's face on the screen looked relieved. "Excellent work, Admiral." "And the Galadrians?" "They're grateful but cautious. They understand that the galaxy has changed." "And the other species? The ones who sent observers?" Kate smiled slightly. "They're falling over themselves to establish diplomatic relations with Earth. Our demonstration against the Nexus made quite an impression." The President nodded. "That was part of the plan. Was it worth it, Kate? All the resources we committed?" "Absolutely," Kate said without hesitation. "We've established ourselves as a power to be respected, not challenged. The Nexus would have reached Earth eventually. Now they never will." As the call ended, Kate walked to the window of her temporary quarters. Below, the lights of the Galadrian capital glittered like stars. In orbit above, human ships moved in careful patterns, maintaining their watch. The first wave of civilian ships from Earth would arrive next month. Scientists, traders, diplomats. Kate thought about Sam's question again. Had they come just to help, or to establish dominance? The truth was both, and neither. Earth had indeed been watching the Nexus for years, growing increasingly concerned about their expansion. The decision to intervene had been debated fiercely in Earth's councils. In the end, they had chosen to act because they could not afford not to. A galaxy, ruled by the Nexus, would eventually threaten Earth. But they had also chosen to act because they could save billions of lives. Power and compassion were not always opposed. In a Nexus battlecruiser returning to their home territory, Grand Admiral Zex Cora stood before his Emperor for the first time since his defeat. He expected execution. Instead, the Emperor had a question. "These humans," the Emperor said. "Could we defeat them if we rebuilt our forces? If we developed new weapons?" Zex Cora thought carefully before answering. He had seen human ships appear from nowhere. He had seen weapons that bent space itself. He had seen his mighty fleet torn apart in less than an hour. "No, Your Majesty," he said finally. "Not in my lifetime. Perhaps not ever." On Earth, celebrations were more subdued. The public received carefully edited reports of the conflict and the peace treaty. There were parades for returning soldiers and speeches about humanity's new role in the galaxy. But many wondered what this new era would bring. Defense Secretary, Kerry Washington faced tough questions from the World Council. "We revealed ourselves to the galaxy," one counselor said. "We can never go back to our peaceful isolation." "We were never truly isolated," Kerry replied. "The Nexus would have found us eventually. Now, instead of facing them alone, we have allies. We have buffer zones. We have time to prepare for whatever comes next." "And what does come next, Secretary?" Kerry looked at the star map displayed on the wall, showing Earth's new position in galactic politics. Exploration, diplomacy, trade, and yes, vigilance. The galaxy is bigger and more dangerous than we imagined, but also filled with more opportunities. As ships from distant systems began arriving at Earth, bringing alien diplomats and traders, humanity prepared for its new role, not just as newcomers but as kingmakers who had forever changed the balance of power through one decisive intervention. The massacre of the Nexus forces would be remembered for centuries as the moment when humanity announced its arrival on the galactic stage, not with words, but with overwhelming military superiority that transformed a desperate last stand into a decisive victory.